Have you ever seen that cartoon with the sheepdog and I forget the other character? I think that it's, well, maybe it's a beagle or it's not Bugs Bunny, but it could have been. So, anyway, it's like the sheepdog and the bunny, they check in at the time clock each morning. Morning, Sam. Morning, Fred. They punch their time clock and they go into this great game preserve. It's just like going into the outdoors. They enter by different doors and they spend the day chasing each other. Or rather, the sheepdog has to protect the sheep, and I guess it's the coyote, maybe dog, that has to get at the sheep. So anyway, the sheepdog is protecting the sheep. So it's like a life and death situation. But at the end of it all, at the end of the day, they come back and they clock out. Have a nice night, Fred. Have a nice night, Sam. It's that kind of a thing. So that's kind of the situation that we have going on right now. When I mentioned that this was a sting operation, I meant to say that these are alien entities of different spiritual orientations that are engaged in this same kind of activity as the cartoon. The good guys and the bad guys. And the entire goal is to see who they can lure, who they can tempt into behaving according to the coarseness of their desire only. Or if people will choose the straight and narrow, the good, the uncorrupted, which is usually harder. It's a harder choice to make. But when people make it, even the selfish aliens, the satanic ones, now they were allegedly from Betelgeuse in the Orion constellation, a red planet orbiting the star of Betelgeuse. That's how we know it. Now, that's something that I was reminded of recently because I'd always understood that both factions, both the good guys and the bad guys, were led by the divinely appointed Zeta race, for which these 10,000 or so plus, essentially, they are flesh suits ready for the first number that's appointed to incarnate with them. Very privileged few that will be actually coming back to Earth here. But they'll also be doing it with souls that have been raised and schooled and matured on another planet, in this case, the Zeta planet, of which apparently there are several. Nonetheless, the important and salient point here is that these races could be different, but the ones that are entrusted with the repopulating of Earth, they are the good ones, or as some would say, the service to others. Yes, and a lot of the terminology that you'll hear from me, it does echo exactly what you might hear and do hear from the emissary of the Zetas. Yes, they have chosen an average woman in the central United States as their emissary. So, stranger things have happened. In any event, so we're in 1954, and we have to take a step back. In 1953, there was a crash in Kingman, Arizona. Now, this was apparently an alien of the service to self persuasion, but they were posing as the other. But they were not of the same ilk as were the Roswell Zetas. And this is where it gets very strange, because with the story, the sagas, well, the one particular saga of Dr. Dan Burrish, which is no longer a name that's being used by that flesh suit, that entity that once used it when it was controversial. Anyway, according to the saga, by this individual who had attended to this extraterrestrial as a doctor, but also mainly, apparently, in various attempts to secure tissue samples from this entity. Just leave it to our glorious human leaders that want to weaponize everything. And they did. That's a whole story in and of itself. Without going into it, suffice to say that by 1954, we've had the 1942 intrusion, we've had the 1947 intrusion, and now in 1954, we had a meeting that allegedly took place at Holloman earlier than the February meeting when President Eisenhower, Ike, and the 60 powerful humans met with this formal gathering of grays, which were, some would have you believe that they were the good ones, and some would have you believe they were the bad ones, but primarily this was the group that had pledged to provide 9 alien aircraft, UFOs of various types, to the U.S. government as part of this treaty. And you must understand that this treaty, and I say this with all seriousness, this treaty was a hoax as part of a sting operation, because it didn't need to even be signed or agreed to, because the various humans that were abducted or allegedly abducted had not only given their consent, but they had volunteered for the duties of being parents to the coming new humanoid race. And most of the abductions which were had involved pregnancies that were later terminated at a very early stage, and the issue had been removed and became, well, allegedly a child that was being incubated beyond the period until gestation was complete, and they had another being as one of the 10,000. But anyway, to get back to the essential part of this, we have these alleged aliens in 1954. They were meeting with Eisenhower with this agreement to provide the technology, and in the form of these 9 craft that the U.S. military wanted to get its hands on. So yeah, they got them all right. They just never knew how to use them. And that's been the irony and the planned irony of it all. Part of the sting operation. They were stung pretty badly when they realized they had been made fools of. But they also made a deal, Majestic 12 that is, because they were now acting on behalf of the entire U.S. government, thanks to the Masons. Yes, the Freemasons. You knew they would show up sooner or later, and they were involved with all of this. They were the ones that were the appointees of Majestic 12, which soon began to supersede the powers of the U.S. president itself, the presidency. And that led Truman to regret ever having created it. And of course, Kennedy wanted to get rid of it. This is one of the reasons, of course, why he had to meet with an early demise. According to the cabal, the powers that be, that still are, they are, for the most part, satanic, but there is enough where the illusion still holds, and they all have to abide by these same rules. So evil, Satan, is not in total control, but neither are the good guys. Anyway, there's enough going on out there between these different factions now. We'll spend more time later on the origins of these 3 groups now. We're talking about a 1942 group, a 1947 group, a 1953 group, and of course 1954. Which of them all met in 1954? Was it true that this treaty was renewed every 9 years after that? was it true? There was another corresponding treaty system that was signed also for once every 9 years that was representative of the other faction that the humans had made a deal with. Because, of course, they wanted to get the best of all worlds. Little did they know they were really being made fools of. But it allowed the soul gardeners and for God, for the angels to see who was doing what, who would sell their soul out for power. It's the classic setup. And yet these people fall for it every time. They go for the power. And unfortunately, the wrong kind of people do get the power, and then they wield it in such a way as to tyrannize the rest of us. And they've had a plan ongoing for quite a while in which they would inherit the earth, or they would control the earth and gradually whittle the masses down to a very, very small managerial segment of the population, and the rest would be robots and entities that they themselves had created, artificial intelligence. Ultimately, there would only be a very, very small handful of elitists that would tend to live on and to reincarnate, what have you. But their plan for us was to get rid of us. And so they've had to work extra hard at doing that, which they're doing, and I won't even go into it. You know what I'm talking about. It was intended. It was intended actually years ago. There were trial runs every several years based on other phenomena. Again, more details for another time. But these people, these entities, over the course of the years since 1954, they have indeed abducted, but only with not only the consent of, but the voluntary ask for permission that the souls of all those humans gave beforehand. So the point is that the military authorities that had made these deals, they essentially thought that they were giving control over these humans, these supposedly poor, helpless humans, to an alien race. So this is a way in which they proved themselves to be evil. They were following an evil path because they willingly were giving up people that they thought could be harmed by what they believed to be aliens from another planet that just stumbled here and were just simply advanced and wanted to get the best of us. And, that's exactly why they came here, but they also came to warn us. Now, in the case of the bad guys, because they told us what we wanted to hear, they sweetened their warnings with, well, you can avoid it. You can avoid the bad thing if you pray hard enough. And these Freemasons, they fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. So that's how we came to be in a situation where humanity that was being controlled on the surface of the planet by a group, a cabal of establishment prodigies and personalities and power poobahs. They had the power to control us and manipulate us, and they were going along their merry way doing that. And when they learned in 1954 that this bad thing was going to put a premature end to their plans, there's been a race on for them to immanentize the Iskatan, or essentially to make a self-fulfilling prophecy out of the results of the end times that they've been prophesying for some time. But the entire time, both the good aliens and the bad aliens, they've been working together on this, but they are separate. It is totally separate. It's not that they're working together, but they have to make their moves and counter moves according to dictates of protocol. Oh, that's a whole nother video in and of itself. Again, this is from multiple sources, but if you recognize a particular source, don't worry, there will be a different one right along in a few minutes. So we are at the point now where we've been working with or being manipulated by this group. First, a group of humans, and then a group of aliens that they were supposedly working with, that they had decided to make deals with because they thought they would get all this power. And these were the ones that liked to talk to them in their own voice, because essentially that's what they were doing. And this ended up with a lot of humans that had made the decision to go along with the bad guys, the service to self, the satanic ones, that if they had done that, they had essentially sold their soul out. And they made it quite apparent. But even if no one was harmed, or no one will be harmed, but unfortunately there are people that are being harmed. This is a real war. Don't kid yourself. And don't allow what I've said in a disparaging way to allow you to think that there's no cost to what's going on. There's a huge cost. The cost really comes down to your soul, and everyone's soul. And as we descend into this moment of chaos, which will begin the tribulations proper, because, baby, we haven't seen nothing yet. It's going to get really bad, too. But enough doom and gloom. I'm just full of it all the time, aren't I? But that's just the way that it is. I try to put a cheerful face on it for now. But as long as this is getting through to you and you understand that this is no light matter, it's no laughing matter. So we are now in a position where this sting operation by these entities, which we cloak as extraterrestrial or ultra-dimensional, they really are more like our angels and the demons. And this is a grand stage production. It's being recorded live, real time, our thoughts and everything, in front of a galaxy of trillions, quadrillions, quintillions. From all over the galaxy, they are watching us in our third density, and we have so little clue they are out there, other than the inspiration that we get from the knowledge our own senses provide us and the logic and wisdom that comes from that. So it's an amazing illusion, but we are the only ones watching it in our reality, other than those that have received this permission to interact, because that is one thing that came from the treaty and the subsequent treaties, is that there was an agreement that there would be entities from this other reality known as extraterrestrials that have come to see us, and they would refer to us as humans. They did take a group back with them, and supposedly they just went over to the other side of the sun and parked on the dead planet, twin planet of Earth, where they holed up, and it just drove the humans there stark raving mad. And apparently they came back to Earth and died soon after. They may have been killed soon after. They may have died there and were dumped on our doorstep, but for whatever reason, there were only a small handful of hostages. The original hostage, which was their part of the deal, they would leave someone with us and we would exchange ambassadors. They really had the humans believing this, so much so that the human authorities, they have believed it to the point where they've made other decisions that have betrayed the true core values of which spiritual polarity they're on. It doesn't matter whether their carcasses last a few extra years on the continent of Antarctica. For all I understand, even though they think Antarctica is going to be on the new equator, they may not realize that the Antarctic plate will be sunk. There won't be any place for them to go other than the new land, which I think they already had set their sights on. They want anywhere where we can't get to them. It's a very small group of people. And if we ever found out and could get to them, what they've done in our name, how they bamboozled us, the murderous intent they've had towards us with lasting and telling effect, they know what we would do to them. They want to make sure they're as far away as possible from the rest of us. That's what they're doing now. Now, I'll review this and come back if there's some more details about the alien sting operation that I've left out. I'll take some questions. Try to leave a question or two if you're that interested. But remember, do not share this with anyone. They'll think you've gone stark raving mad and that you're listening to somebody that's stark raving mad. So let's keep it between us.